Hilchos Sha'ar Avos Hatumos Perek Esrim. This is the last Perek of Sha'ar Avos Hatumos, and again is Mamshech and the Dinim of Sofik Tum Rishus Hayachid Sveki Tomei and Rishus Harabim Sveki Tor. Now, in order for a place to be a Rishus Hayachid, that it should have a din of Sofik Tum Rishus Hayachid Sveki Tomei, there has to be first of all a place where Rabbim don't go there. It's not a regular place that Rabbim go there. It's a place that it's a secluded place. That's number one. And also that Bepale, there aren't more than two people there. As we learned before, that we learn out from Seta, that by Seta there were only two people. So Al-Derez, that to be a Rishus Hayachid, it has to be that there's no more than two people there. But also it has to be a place where you're not expecting any people there. It's not a place where Rabbim go there. So if it's a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos, so obviously it's also a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah, because even if there's no people there, but since it's a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos, obviously we're talking about a place where Rabbim Mahalchim Shomim, so it's expected that Rabbim should be there. Masha'ik, the fact that it's a Rishus Hayachid L'Inyan Tumah, that doesn't necessarily L'Inyan Shabbos, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a Rishus Hayachid L'Inyan Tumah. And also it doesn't have to be a Rishus, it could be a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah, even if it's a Rishus Hayachid L'Inyan Shabbos. That's what Perek Esrim. Kol Mokim Shu Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos. If it's a place that is a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos, so it's a Mokim Shem Rabbim Mahalchim Shama, so then it's Poshet Kach Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah. Then it'll be a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah. It doesn't have to be a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos to be a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah. But if it's a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos, it's for sure a Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah. Now, Arba Amis HaSmuchas L'Rishus Harabim, because the Mishnah teaches that we're talking about a Movi. Before the Rambam, when he spoke a din of Sofik Tum Rishus Hayachid, he said that Nichnas LeMovi. Movi had a din of a Rishus Hayachid. But the Arba Amis, which is Smuchas L'Rishus Harabim in a Movi, you have a Movi that's going from a Rishus Harabim, and the Movi could have a din of Rishus Hayachid. But Lepel, the Arba Amis HaSmuchas L'Rishus Harabim is Harei Hein Ki Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah. They have a din of Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah because it's a place which is part of the Rabbim. The Rabbim can see what's happening there. V'chein HaKarmelis, Kigein Hayam Ve'itz Devonis, the Karmelis, a yam which also people could go there. And Al-Derez Eitz Devonis. Eitz Devonis is the place where they put Lifnei HaChaydnuyes, the Safsalim. So it doesn't have a din of Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Shabbos because Ein Rabbim Mahalchim Sham. But L'Inyan Tumah, since there's Rabbim are there in that area, so therefore it has a din of Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah. Is Harei Hein Ki Rishus Harabim L'Tumah. Now Yesham Mekemis, Halacha Gimel, Yesham Mekemis, She'aval Pishen Rishus Hayachid L'Shabbos, L'Gabi Shabbos, they have a din of Rishus Hayachid because what determines the Rishus Hayachid L'Shabbos is mechitzas. As long as there are the mechitzas, the required mechitzas for Rishus Hayachid has a din of Rishus Hayachid. But nevertheless, Harei Hein Ki Rishus Harabim L'Inyan Tumah, because the fact that there are mechitzas doesn't make it Rishus Hayachid L'Inyan Tumah. L'Inyan Tumah, as we said, it has to be a place, first of all, that there's no more than two people there, and also that it's a place that it's not Rabbim Hilchim Sham. Ve'eluhein, Hashvilin, Hamefuloshim, L'Sichen, Ulebedes, Ulegites. Now, so you have a shvil, which is a road, and that road goes one side, it has, let's say, a bear or a gita, or it has a bear or a wine press. So over there, so that has a place, so it has a din of a mechitza, and al derech zeh on the other side, you can have a lechi vekera. So memela it has a din of Rishus Hayachid, but on the other end, people come there in order to go to the bear and to the sichim or to the gites. So memela, since it's a mokim, which is mufulashim l'sichim l'beidus l'gites, so even though be'etzim hilchas Shabbos it has a din of Rishus Hayachid, beside the hilchas, because it's not a maviyam fulish, on one side you have the lechi vekera, but on the other hand, L'Inyan Tumah, since people go there, so therefore it doesn't have a din of Rishus Hayachid. There's a din of Rishus Harabim. And also, V'habika, if you have a place where there's sod, Bika is an area which has sodis, Hamukefes Geder, which is surrounded with a Geder, B'meis HaChama. So B'meis HaChama is a place when things are growing, so therefore, B'meis HaChama things aren't growing. So Memela, people walk there, they were cut already, and things aren't growing, so people are walking there. So even though Mitzad Hilchas Shabbos, since it has a mechitza, it has a din Rishus Hayachid, but since we're dealing with the fields, with B'meis HaChama, where people walk there, so therefore L'Gabi Tumah has a din of Rishus Harabim. And also Ubasilke Malachim, which is Shehu Binyan Rochiv Harbi Lamed Be'anshi Merkava. So again, it's a building. So Mitzad Hilchas Shabbos, it has a din of Rishus HaYochid, but there's a lot of people there. So obviously, it's not a dozen din of Rishus HaYochid. The Inyan Tumah. Shehu Binyan Rochiv Harbi Lamed Be'anshi Melchama, the Yeshle Psochim Harbi Psochim Rishus HaRabim. Or V'hapoiron is also V'hu Binyan HaGodel, Sheyeshle Shnei Psochim Zeh Keneged Zeh, where you walk into one Pesach and you go out the other Pesach. So again, people keep walking through there. Or v'chotzer, shaharabim nechnosim b'Pesach zeh, v'yetzim Pesach acher. It's a regular chotzer, but lepel, it's a shortcut. Many people use it as a shortcut. They go through one Pesach, they go to another Pesach. V'chein mevois, hayordim liyam elinor, the movi that goes to the Yam elinor, aval b'shen gedurim mikan mikan. Even though Lepel there's a gather on both sides, Lepel is with Rabbim Metapsim Ve'elim, and people climb over this gather. So even though there's a gather mamish, it's mamish closed, but since it's regular for people to climb over the gather and go into this area, so therefore it has a Rishus HaRabim Shabbos. V'habimoises. The bimoises is like a bima, a raised area, or v'hamerchatzois, a bathhouse, which again, it's obviously a Rishus HaYochid. It's a makom hamukiv mechitzas, but nevertheless, it's a place where people go. Is a rein Rishus HaRabim l'tumah. V'chein kol ha'azorah, the azorah b'Beis Hamikdash is also Rishus HaRabim l'tumah. The nekudas advarim is that even though be'etzem it's a makom hamukiv mechitzas, so therefore mehilchis Shabbos it has a din of Rishus HaYochid, but since it's a place where people go, it's a place where people are expected to go, so therefore it's not a makom of seclusion, it's not a makom which is dema to seita, and memela it has a din of Rishus HaRabim l'tumah. Halacha Dalet. Gage so'ir shederech ha'ir veres aleim, on top of the gag, was right, it was a seder that people walk through the gag to get from one place to another place, is again is Rishus HaRabim l'tumah, even though the Gabi Shabbos again it has a din, since it's Kavei Asara and it's Rachav Dalet al Dalet, so it has a din of Rishus HaYochid, but the Gabi Hilchas Tumah it has a din of Rishus HaRabim. Now Hagina, which is a garden, Bisman she's Mishtameres, if it's a garden which is Mishtameres, notice it's a closed garden, and people don't walk there, it's a watched garden, it's like a private garden, so then it has a din of Rishus HaYochid, it has a din of Rishus HaYochid in Tumah. It's not a watch garden, it's a place where people feel comfortable to walk in there anytime. So then is Rishus HaRabim l'tumah. V'chein basilki gdela, which we mentioned before, this large binyan, which yeshlei psochim harbe. So bizman shepeis chenese, when it's open, is Rishus HaRabim l'tumah. But bizman sheneil chenese, when it's closed, so then it's Rishus HaYochid lakil. So that's Rishus HaYochid sai for Shabbos and sai for Tumah. So the Nekudas Advarim over here is that Nachamal, that Rishus HaRabim L'nyan Shabbos is obviously also Rishus HaRabim L'nyan Tumah, because there's people going there. Masha'en Ken, it's not Rishus HaRabim L'nyan Shabbos, so much like Carmelis is also as a din of Rishus HaRabim L'nyan Tumah, because again people go there, or even Dalet Amos Ben Movi is also, it's a place which is Samach Rishus HaRabim. People go there, and then the Rambam gave a dugma of Kama Siyurim of Rishus HaYochid, where even though Mitzad has a gather, so therefore it has a din of Rishus HaYochid, but nevertheless, since people walk there, Al Derech Habika, which is Mukefes gather, B'Meis HaChamas, so since people walk there, so therefore it doesn't have a din, it has a din of Rishus HaRabim L'inyan Tumah. Halacha Vov, Habika HaMukefes gather B'Meis HaKshamim, Rishus HaYochid L'Shabbos U'L'Tumah. A bika, which is a place of fields, which is surrounded also by a wall, so during the Meis HaKshamim, it's Rishus HaYochid in Shabbos because it's Mukev Gather, and it's also Rishus HaYochid in Tumah because it's Meis HaKshamim. However, Vimlei Hoysem Mukefes, so Harei Rishus HaYochid l'Tumah Bilvad, L'gabi Rishus HaYochid, it's L'gabi Tumah, it's a Rishus HaYochid, even though L'gabi Shabbos, it doesn't have walls. Now over here we're saying a dugma. Until now we're saying Rishus HaRabim l'Shabbos is definitely Rishus HaRabim l'Tumah. Now Rishus HaYochid l'Shabbos is lav davka Rishus HaYochid l'Tumah. And then we had a Carmelis, which was also had a din of Rishus HaRabim l'Tumah. Now we're saying that the Kabei Hechatimtza of something which is a Rishus HaYochid l'Tumah, even though L'gabi Shabbos it's not a Rishus HaYochid, and as long as it's a place which is secluded, even though L'gabi Shabbos it doesn't have mechitzas, but nevertheless it has a din of a Rishus HaYochid L'gabi Tumah. Then the Rambam says, Ubika sha'avro le'Meis HaKshamim, Whereas once there was overall Mesak Shom, and at that point in time it had a din of Rishus HaYochid, is Harei Rishus HaYochid L'Tumah Afilu Mesacham. So it comes out like a Mechudish Dikazach. In other words, it comes out L'Churi the Pashas of the Ram that there can't be a Metzias of a Bika B'Mesacham should have a din of Rishus HaRabim only if there was never a Mesak Shom. And those once there was a Mesak Shom, and at that point in time, it was already had a din of Rishus HaYochid. So then B'Mesacham it will also have a din of Rishus HaYochid. So when do we say this din that a Bika B'Mesacham has a din of Rishus HaRabim L'Churi Yemesacham is the L'Churi after Yemesak Shom? So you have to say it's talking about that it's the Bika started. Originally was a midbar. And then now it's started the whole musik of this soda becoming a soda b'meisachama. So b'meisachama, the pasha b'meisachama means it didn't grow yet; it was already cut. Masha'inkin over here we're saying no, the b'meisachama is only because it never grew. It never grew yet, so it's still b'meisachama. So at that point in time, it has a din of a Rishus HaRabim. But once there comes a b'meisak sham and it has a din of a Rishus HaYochid, so then b'meisak acham it will also have a din of a Rishus HaYochid. And there's a Ravid in Baba Basra, brought in Shittim Kovetz in Baba Basra, that he says that because it's nira kechucha tlula, this is meikra the din of be'emes, now it's Rishus HaRabim, now it's Rishus HaYochid. But it's nira kechucha tlula. Now the Maisa is, the Rambam later on in Halacha Yud is going to say clearly, Mokim Rishus HaYochid v'nasu Rishus HaRabim. And then v'chazav v'nasu Rishus HaYochid, so Rishus HaYochid is Rishus HaYochid, Rishus HaRabim is Rishus HaRabim, which is l'chura stira to what we're saying over here. Over here, l'chura, the bika b'meisak sham is a Rishus HaYochid, and b'meisak ham it's a Rishus HaRabim. So l'chura, based on that halacha yud, l'chura, the pashtus would be not like that. It would be not like this halacha. L'chura stira. So some people want to learn differently pshat in this halacha vav, not kipshute. That it's not mamish kipshute. But if you learn kipshute, so you're going to have to learn that halacha in halacha yud means it's talking about things taka changed. There was a Rishus HaRabim, and then you changed something, and it became Rishus HaYochid, then you changed it back, and it became Rishus HaRabim. Whereas you actually made a physical change. Mashenkin over here, b'Meisach Ham, b'Meisach Shom, there was no real physical change. Just that in this time, is that if people do go and people don't go, so then, so in order to avoid that it shouldn't be kechuch u'tlul, it shouldn't be like a joke, that here it was a Rishus HaYochid, now mitam also Rishus HaRabim, so the Chazal instituted that even Meisach Chama, once it was Meisach Shom or Rishus HaYochid, so now it should also have a din of Rishus HaYochid. It's not such a glatte zach. Then the Ram continues, Ve'elahin Yemeisach Chama. What are the Yemeisach Chama? We're saying Yemeisach Chama is Rishus HaRabim. Ve'elahin Yemeisach Chama, Misheti Oker Atfuah Mitecha, once the Tfuah was Neker Mitecha. And the way we're learning that we have to say Yemeisach Chama is the time when normally Tiokra Atfuah Mitecha, but over here there was no Tfuah, because if there was Tfuah and there was Yemeisach Shom, so then there's no din of Yemeisach Chama. It's saying it's not so glottic. Ve'elohen Yemeisach Shom, when do Yemeisach Shom begin? Mishetered Revi'ah Shneah. When the second set of rains, Chav Gimel Cheshvan, that's when the second set of rains begin. So then that's considered the Yemeisach Shom. Now, Bein Hu Igulim Shel Anovim L'Zugim is Rishus HaRabim L'Tumah. So there was the area, they would press the grapes, they would press the grape by foot, they would step on the grapes. Then once the grapes were pressed, they would take the what's left over, the sholachs of those grapes, and they would put it on top of there would be large areas of round, like stones or pieces of wood, and that would press that on top of the grapes to take out more of the juice. So there would be those places which were called the igulim, the places where they pressed those grapes, the what was left over already with the grapes, and also there was the zugim. The zugim was the place where the shalachs, when they finished with the shalachs or the pile of shalachs that they had. So bein igulim shalanov l'zugim, so that's an area where people walk. So that's considered a Rishus HaRabim L'Tumah. That's an area which is called the Rishus HaRabim L'Tumah. Halacha Zayin, Kerem, when you have a vineyard. Sholifnei HaBeitzim, the part of the vineyard which wasn't yet harvested, so that's Rishus HaYochid, because then people can't walk in there. However, La'achar HaBeitzim, what's already behind, where the people already harvested, so that's Rishus HaRabim, the Tumah. That is considered Rishus HaRabim, because then people walk in to take already the Elulays, those things. Bekitzer, people could walk into those vineyards because it was already harvested. So maybe there's no akpad that you're allowed to walk in there. Masai, when do we say that Shla'achar HaBeitzim is considered Rishus Harabim. That's only Bizman Sharabim Nichnosim Beruach Zu V'Yetzim Beruach Shekeneged. And there's a way of getting into that area and getting out of another part of the area. In other words, let's say in that area where it was already La'achar HaBeitzim was already harvested, and you could walk in one door and go out another door. So basically, maybe you could use it as a shortcut. It's a place where people would go. So then it'll be considered a Rishus Harabim. However, Sha'ar, but Masha'in Kain, if it's a place where you really can't go in and out, so people really won't go in there. It's very, very unusual that people will go in there. So Mimele, it has a din of Rishus HaYochid, even La'achar HaBeitzim. Let's read this halacha again. So halacha Zayin. Kerem, Shalifni HaBeitzim, the part of the Kerem, which Shalifni HaBeitzim, which wasn't harvested yet, that's Rishus HaYochid, that's Pashat Rishus HaYochid. La'achar HaBeitzim, so then it's Rishus Harabim L'Tumah, then it has a din L'gabi Tumah Rishus Harabim, because then people do walk in. When do people walk in? La'achar HaBeitzim, Bizman Sharabim Nichnosim Beruach Zu V'Yetzim Beruach Shekeneged. Sha'ar Kol HaMekaymes Chutz Mi'elu Shemibarnu Dinam. So the Ram over here gave examples of places which be'etzim is Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan Shabbos, but nevertheless they're not Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan Tumah. So in that the Ram is saying Sha'ar Kol HaMekaymes Chutz Mi'elu Shemibarnu Dinam is Kshem Shem Rishus HaYochid L'Shabbos. All other places, if they're Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan Shabbos, is Kachen Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan L'Tumah. Because generally, if a place Rishus HaYochid L'Shabbos, it's a place that's Mukav Mechitzis, a house, or a place that's a Mukav Ageder. So B'Parshus, if it's a Mukav Ageder, so it's also a secluded place, except for the places that the Rambam mentioned, where they're Beferish, even though they have it in a Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan Shabbos, because they have a Mechitzah, but on the other end, they're not secluded places. Halacha Ches. Now, V'yesh Mekaymes, She'enon Rishus HaYochid L'Shabbos, V'afal B'kein, Hein Rishus HaYochid L'Tumah, Mipnei She'ena Om Mishtamshim Bem, which the Rambam really mentioned that one of the cases was, if you have a Bika, B'meis HaChama, B'meis HaKshomim, that doesn't have Mechitzas, so it doesn't have a din of Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan Shabbos, because it doesn't have Mechitzas, but on the other end, since people don't use it, so therefore it has a din of Rishus HaYochid L'Tumah. Now the Rambam is saying other places. Yesh Mekaymes, the She'ein Rishus HaYochid L'Shabbos, V'afal B'kein, Ein Rishus HaYochid L'Tumah, P'nei She'ein Om Mishtamshim Bem. Ve'elu hein, Ho'ilonis, a tree, which doesn't have a din of Rishus HaYochid in the Shabbos, and also the V'chayre Rishus Harabim. There's a hole which is open to Rishus Harabim, like the Rambam will say. Aval Pi She'ein Bem Al-Bor Labos, Memele, they don't have a din of Rishus HaYochid, but nevertheless, the Chayre Rishus Harabim don't have a din of Rishus HaYochid. But on the other end, so since they're already secluded, they're taken away from Rishus Harabim, so they have a din of Rishus HaYochid L'Inyan Tumah. Ketzad. Elon shu emed b'Rishus Harabim and v'tumah b'teichei, and there's tumah on the Elon, and now all of l'reisha you went on top of the Elon, so the Elon doesn't have a din of Rishus HaYochid, and sofik noga, sofik le noga, nesveki tomei, because lepel you were in the Rishus Harabim, there's a sofik noga, sofik le noga, so in Mela you were on the Elon, which is secluded, so to speak, even though it doesn't have a din of Rishus Harabim, Rishus HaYochid rather. So Memela Sveki Tumah. Now that is a hichnas yodi lecher sheyesh bituma. There's a hole that has tum in it, and you actually put your hand in there. So by putting your hand in there, so it's like your hand is outside of the Rishus Harabim now. It's outside of the Rishus Harabim. It's in the Rishus HaYochid. So and Sofik Noga, Sofik Li Noga. So again, Sveki Tumah. So we have a place over here where it doesn't have a din of Rishus HaYochid, L'Inyan Shabbos, but on the other end, L'Inyan Tumah, once your hand is there or your body is there, and now the shaila is whether you in the Gea B'tumah, so the din is your tumah, beside the din of Sofik Tumah Rishus HaYochid, Sveki Tumah. Halacha Tes. Chanus Shehitmei. Now Chanus means a store, but a store would be like a booth, that there would be like a booth in the Rishus Harabim, and that booth would serve as a Chanus. Is Chanus Shehitmei, Upsucha Rishus Harabim, there's tumah in this Chanus, and it's open to the Rishus Harabim. From the Rishus Harabim you can go into the Chanus. Now, Sofik Nichnas, Sofik Le Nichnas. You have a Sofik whether you went into this Chanus. So you are in the Rishus Harabim. Yes, Shaila, did you go into this Chanus? So the din is Sveki Tur, because Shekol HaChanus, K'misheretz, Amunach Rishus Harabim. The Chanus is Tomei, the Chanus has a Dover Amatami B'oil in the Chanus. The question, did the person go into the Chanus or not? So he's in the Rishus Harabim. The Shaila is, did he go into the Rishus HaYochid? So Memela, so Sveki Tomei, Shesofik Magoy Tur, just like if you have a sheretz in Rishus Harabim, and the shaila is, did you touch the sheretz? So we say Sofik Tumah Rishus Harabim Sveki Tor. So al derech you have a chanus, which is like in Rishus Harabim, and the suffix is whether you went into the chanus. So again, so suffix Torah. Now, however, hoyu shtei chanuyas, which is achas tehera v'achas tmeya. There was two chanuyas, one with Torah, one with Tomei. There was a mess in one of them, and v'nichnas la'achas mem. You went into one of them, and suffix l'tmeya nichnas suffix l'teira. You're not really sure which one you went into. So the din is sveki tomei. Why? Because that's shezeh suffix rishus hayochid. That is already considered a suffix rishus hayochid. Sha'chanus rishus hayochid. Achanus rishus hayochid. So it's like a chiddush over here. Whereas normally we think about suffix rishus hayochid means you're definitely in the rishus hayochid, and the shaila is in the rishus hayochid itself. Where did you go? Masha'egan over here, Yataka were definitely in a rishus hayochid. You don't know which rishus hayochid you were in. So you were already, like you're really in a rishus harabim, and you went into one of the rishus hayochid. So over here we're saying from that second, but since lapel you definitely went into a rishus hayochid. The question is only which rishus hayochid you went into. So over here we also say the principle that suffix tum rishus hayochid is feiki tami v'chein bika b'meisak sham, which has a din sheyesh ba sadis arbe. This bika uba sada achas tmeya. There's one sada that's tmeya. So the bika generally is rishus hayochid b'meisak sham, like we learned. V'amar, and he says nechnasti lebika zu. I definitely went into this bika. I don't know if I went into the sada which is tmeya. So the din is sveki tami shesafik tum rishus hayochid. I feel a suffix bia. We don't know bechlal if you went into this to the sada hatmeya is also tami. Now l'chur over here this is an easier din because lapel you were in the rishus hayochid, which that rishus hayochid was curled inside this sada inside the sada because it was one big rishus hayochid. And the shaila is, did you go into that rishus hayochid? Which is similar to the story of the Mavi that we had originally. You went into the Mavi and the Shaila, you went into the Chotzer, you went into the Chotzer. Shaila, you went into the bias. But over here, there's like two batim. You went into one bias, you're not sure which bias you went into. Over here, there's two chanuyas. So nevertheless, we say, since you went into a bias, and you don't know which one it is, and a bias is a Rishus HaYochid, so it means you were in a Rishus HaYochid, and you don't know if you were in the Rishus HaYochid Atmeyo or the Rishus HaYochid Atera, so also we say that goes into the gather of Safik Tum Rishus HaYochid Sovek Itomi. Halacha Yud, Mokim Shehoy Rishus HaYochid, which we mentioned before, V'Nasur Rishus HaRabim, and then the Chazer V'Nasur Rishus HaYochid. So the din is Rishus HaYochid, Sovek Itomi, Rishus HaRabim, Sovek Itor. So normally you would say that this din also applies to a bika Mesach Ham, Mesach Sham. Based on what the Rambam, if you learn the Pshat and the Rambam over there, Kipshute, that once it was b'Mesach Shamim or Rishus HaYochid, so then the Mesach Ham, it can't have a din of Rishus HaRabim, so then you're going to have to say that this means that it was changed. I mean, that's not the Pashtus. Mokim Shehoy Rishus HaYochid, V'Nas Rishus HaRabim, you're going to have to say Taich, that it means you made it into Rishus HaRabim. You did something to change the Matzav. Halacha Yudalef. Dvarim shehem b'Rishus HaRabim, hareihen k'Rishus HaRabim. Something that's in the Rishus HaRabim is in the Rishus HaRabim. Ketzad, kupa b'Rishus HaRabim, gevei asor tvachim, v'hatuma b'teicha. There's something tummy in the kupa. Now, sofik noga, sofik lei noga, is fekitor, because lapel, you're standing in Rishus HaRabim, and the kupa is also in the Rishus HaRabim. The shaila is only whether or not you went out of this Rishus HaRabim and went into this kupa. In other words, you stuck your hand into the kupa. Lapel, right now you're in the Rishus HaRabim. The kupa is also in the Rishus HaRabim. So Mela, we say Sveikitor. However, Hichnas Yodi Letecha, if you actually put your hand inside, and Sofik Naga, Sofik Lei Naga, so then Sveikitomi, then it's Sveikistomi. So Nachamo, you're staying in Rishus HaRabim. The question is only whether you became Tommy from something in the kupa. So we say, if we know for sure you put your hand into the kupa, so you're Tommy. Masha'in Kain, because Sveiki Tommy, Masha'in Kain, if you're standing in Rishus HaRabim, so then it's Sveiki Tor. I'm not sure really what's this chidush of Dvarim, She'im Rishus HaRabim, Harein Rishus HaRabim, L'chura. That's not the L'chura. The chidush over here is, the pshat is, you're standing in Rishus HaRabim. This thing is a Rishus HaYochid. The question is that I go into this thing. So while I'm in Rishus HaRabim, mehechetesa, that I went into the kupa. It's not like mehechetesa, I went into the chanus, just like we had before by the chanus. Mehechetesa, I went into the chanus. I don't know. I'm standing in Rishus HaRabim. The question is that I go into the Rishus HaYochid. Masha'inkin, once I put my hand into Rishus HaYochid, so then I'm in Rishus HaYochid. Not really sure what's this dama of dvarim shem Rishus HaRabim, harein Rishus HaRabim. Then the Ram continues, Hoysa kfisha. Now, before we were talking about that there was a davar hatamei in the kupa. Now over here's fakert. Hoysa kfisha nesuna al kseifi. You have a kvisha. A kvisha is a keli which is made out of stone. It's not makabel tuma. And the kikar truma korach besid, and there's a kikar of truma which is wrapped in a sieve. Sieve is a material which is like between the bark and the tree, which again the sieve is not makabel tuma. A b'niyor, which is also not makabel tuma. And v'noson l'teiches. You have a kikar of truma in this kvisha, which is al kseife. And there's a question: Safik naga ba'achar, Safik le naga. Did someone in the Rishus Harabim? Now that the question over here: did someone in the Rishus Harabim touch it? So the din is Sveiki Tomei. Now this is a chidush because you have an item in the Rishus Hayochid. Now you have an item in the Rishus Hayochid, and the question is: did it become Tomei from something in the Rishus Harabim? From something in the Rishus Harabim. So we're saying that since the item is in the Rishus Hayochid, the item is in the Rishus Hayochid. So Mela we say Sveiki Tomei, even though it becomes Tomei from something in the Rishus Harabim. The Rambam argues on this Rambam, but L'chura, that's the din of the Rambam. The Rambam is saying if you have an item in the Rishus Hayochid, and Lepel it's a suffix whether this item became Tomei, even though the Tomei, if it did become Tomei, it would have become Tomei from something in Rishus Harabim. But nevertheless, it goes into the category of suffix Tum Rishus Hayochid, Sveiki Tomei. Halacha Yud Beis. Chamer b'Rishus Harabim, which is Gaveya Asara Tvachim, and Utuma Nesuna Olaf. There's a Tuma on top of this Chamer, and Safik Noga, Safik Le Noga. The question is, did the person touch this Tuma which is on top of the Chamer? Or did something touch it? So the din is again, Sveiki Tor, because since it's on top of Rishus Harabim, it's on top of the Chamer in the Rishus Harabim, it finds itself in a different Rishus. In other words, that's Taka Rishus Hayochid. The Tumah is in the Rishus Hayochid. Abulepeil, the person finds himself in the Rishus Harabim. Since the person finds himself in Rishus Harabim, so he has the Rishus Harabim, which is B'Parshas also included in the halacha, in the beginning of halacha Yudalo. Dvarim shem Rishus Harabim, Hareim Rishus Harabim. In other words, since these items are in Rishus Harabim, so even though the din itself of the item is a Rishus Hayochid, but Lepeil, he's in Rishus Harabim. Yeah, now Pashat Yadi al Gabav, Safik Noga, Safik Le Noga, the person stuck his hand on top of the Chamer, and there's definitely he put his hand on top of the Chamer. The question is only, did he touch the tumor or not? So then it's Sveiki Tomei. So it's L'chura the same din like we had by the Kupa. He's standing in Rishus Harabim. The Kupa has a din of Rishus Hayochid. The top of the Chamer has a din of Rishus Hayochid. And there's tumah on top of the Chamer, there's tumah in the Kupa. So while he's standing in the Rishus Harabim, since he's in Rishus Harabim, so in Lachinami, the item is in, the Kuma is in Rishus Hayochid, but that has a din of Safik Tum Rishus Harabim, Sveiki Tor. Masha'in Kain, if he put his hand into the Kupa, or he put his hand on top of the Chamer, so now the question is, did that hand touch the tumah? So the hand was already in the Rishus Hayochid. So B'chiyah Gavne, we go the principle of Safik Tum Rishus Hayochid, Sveiki Tomei. V'chein sel la'amuna b'Rishus Harabim, which is Gavei Asara Tvachim, and V'tumah Nesuna Olav, is Safik Naga, Safik Le Naga, is again Sveiki Tor. Because Lepeil, he's standing in Rishus Harabim, the fact that there's tumah on a cellar which is Gavei Asara does make a difference. However, all of Reish HaSela, which this Reish HaSela has a din of Rishus Hayochid, and then Safik Naga, Safik Le Naga, is Sveiki Tor, Tomei, which is L'chura Pashat. There's all these three cases. Inside the case of the Kupa, inside the case of the Chamer, inside the case of the cellar is the same case. If he's standing in Rishus Harabim, and there's a tumah in Rishus Hayochid, in a place which has a din of Rishus Hayochid, and the question is, if he's standing in Rishus Harabim, the question is, did he touch that tumah? So it's Sveiki Tor. Masha'inkin, if he stuck his hand, or he went himself into that area, so then it has a din of Safik Tum Rishus Hayochid, Sveiki Tor. V'hoye zov reichav al chamerei, v'zer reichav al chamerei, u'mahalchem baderech. They're both being reichav al chamerei, and l'chura being reichav al chamerei as in Rishus Hayochid we learned. And they're mahalchem baderech. And Safik Noga bezov, Safik Le Noga. So l'chura the pashtus, it would sound like it's a Safik Tum Rishus Hayochid. Now there is a Tinik Tomei Murkev al Ksefer Shalaviv, and the Tinik Tor Murkev al Ksefer Shalaviv, and v'holchu zeh b'sad zeh, and again Safik Noga, Safik Le Noga. So each one, when they're all Gabek Ksefer Shalaviv, l'chura has in Rishus Hayochid. Chavila al Kseife and V'horek Mugdber B'Kesel and Safik Noga, Safik Le Noga. Or Kalim Shtuchim B'Rishus Harabim L'mayla Mi'asora, so it's L'mayla Mi'asora, doesn't have a din of Rishus Harabim, and V'hatomi Yever, the Tomi is Yever, and Safik Hasid, Safik Le Hasid. So L'chura has a din of Safik to Rishus Hayochid. Nevertheless, Hakel Tor. And the reason over here is because since we're dealing with something that's moving, something that's moving. In other words, in the case with the Zov is Reichev, the Metami is moving, so Mele he doesn't have a din of since he's moving, so therefore that's also, even though they're both in Rishus HaYochid, but Lepel he doesn't have a din of Safek to Rishus HaYochid Sveki Tomei. Even in the case where the Reik was Mudbek Bekesel, so the Reik was in Rishus HaYochid, but Lepel, since the Kalim, the Chavila, which is Al Kseife, was moving, was in a moving motion, so the fact that it's Munach Al Kseife doesn't have a din of the Chavila being in Rishus HaYochid. Because if the Chavila would be standing Al Kseife, and then there would be a suffix, whether or not it touched this Reik, so then Take would have a din of suffix to Rishus HaYochid Svekitome. But since the person was walking, the Chavila Al Kseife, V'harek mudbek bekesel and sofik noga, sofik lei noga, because the chavila al ksef and he was walking with the chavila. So b'chiyah gavner has a din of sofik tumah that knows kilu the chavila, even though it's fine to l'mayla miyud, but it's not l'mayla miyud sitting l'mayla miyud. So memela doesn't have the din of sofik tumah rishus hayochid sveki tumah. Now that is all the other cases when they're moving. The zov is reichev and zer reichev al chamerei, so they're moving. So b'chiyah gavner we don't have this din of Safik Tum Rishus HaYochid Sveki Tomei.